Being my personal favorite anime and manga, I've wanted to do a video on Mob Psycho 100 for a while now, though scaling wise there really isn't that much to go over, so I figured I'd just skip to the end and just rank every Esper in the series. I've seen a lot of videos like this on YouTube, though none of them actually really go in depth and are more like the chart power scaling power levels videos, and aren't very satisfying, so I thought I'd do a fully analyzed version of the topic. This topic is very interesting because there's a surprising amount of power scaling in the series that people don't really pay attention to. For simplicity's sake, I'm also going to be dividing characters into tiers with a range of where they could possibly go, alongside my own personal numerical rankings. I'm also going to be skipping the jokey gag characters who really have no relevant scaling, like Kirin Jodo or Bonsho Maru. Anyway, let's get into it with... At tier 10, number 30, is going to be the HQ Claw Foot Soldiers, who are all stated to be just below the level of the Scars. Given that it's obvious they are inferior to any character who is a Scar or above, they are at the bottom of the list. They work as a good baseline, I think, for the list, for the reasons I just stated, as well as the fact that many characters actually fight and scale to them even in large numbers. So again, they are at number 30 and basically the bottom of the totem pole. Obviously, the natural progression would be moving on to the actual Scars, so for tier 9 we have the Claw Division Leaders, and any normal Scars tied for 29. It's implied by Ishiguro that the Division Leaders are chosen because they are stronger than the Scars under their command, however nothing actually implies that all Division Leaders are stronger than all normal Scars, so for example the Division Leader of Division 8 isn't necessarily stronger than all the Scars in Division 7. They would, however, still be stronger than the Foot Soldiers, who are stated to be below the level of a Scar, meaning they'd still be weaker than the bare minimum. We'll also be including Muto, Matsuo, Miwagawa, and Murakai, Scars from the 7th Division. Muto has the ability to cast illusions over people, however the one time we see this, Mob reflects it back onto him and destroys him instantly. Matsuo can control a plethora of evil spirits, some of which Dimple refers to as, quote, mid-level, but we really have no idea what this means. Fart Cloud Dimple basically ate all of his spirits as a joke and then called it a little bit of strength. It didn't even bring him close to his full power. It's kind of hard to differentiate between the two, so we'll just say they're tied to be at 28 and 27. Miwagawa does fight Taruki, however he does very poorly, and Taruki leaves the battle completely unscathed. In fact, all Miwagawa ends up doing is making Taruki sweat a little bit, but still better than Matsuo, so he will be 26. Murakai is then able to knock out Taruki with a single attack while he's off guard, under pretty similar circumstances to when Miwagawa lost to Taruki. His ability also lets him create tons of clones of himself, which is a lot more useful than, fire. He does, however, not scale much above that, and he's one of the first to fall against Shimazaki, so he will just be 25. Tier 8 is going to be the Claw HQ Scars, specifically Fukuda, Higashio, and Utsutsuki, being 24, 23, and 22. Though the actual order does not matter. These three were shown taking out massive groups of Claw Foot Soldiers, and as Scars should be stronger than them. It's also a fair assumption, I think, to say that the HQ Claw Foot Soldiers are stronger than the normal Foot Soldiers, that the Scars would also be stronger than the normal Scars. Seems to check out to me. Sho also considered them powerful enough to help with his revolt against Claw, and the three of them working together could force Minageshi to get a little serious. Next is the largest group, that being Tier 7, with most of the 7th Division Scars, which includes Koyama, Takeuchi, Tsuchiya, Mukai, Sakurai, Terada, and Ishiguro. These Scars almost all lasted much longer than Fukuda and the others against Shimazaki. Koyama states that he is stronger than Terada, while both are superior to an earlier Teruki, making Terada 21 and Koyama 20. Sakurai is also superior to Teruki, however he has other abilities as well, like his Cursed Cologne, which can take out psychics much stronger than he is, making him 19. Mukai is a weird one because she was one of the first to go down against Shimazaki, but Tsuchiya thinks she'd be a scary opponent to face due to her ability. This ability is controlling countless puppets with psychic powers as long as she's conscious. It's possible that Shimazaki just blitzed her so her puppets were useless, so I'll just put her at 18, though again she could be a little lower or higher. Tsuchiya is considered by Ishiguro to be one of the strongest scars in the 7th division, and that if she's beaten, only Takeuchi can be trusted to defeat Mob, so she is 17 above the other scars, which Ishiguro doesn't really talk about. While she does state that she's worried about fighting Mukai, she also does go on to fight Mob right after all of Mukai's puppets are destroyed. So it's more like she sees Mukai as a threat rather than absolutely above her. That obviously brings us to Takeuchi, who is considered superior to Tsuchiya, and even scars from other divisions know about him because of his power, so he is number 16. Ishiguro is still considered the strongest by Toichiro himself, with Sakurai even doubting that if he and Koyama rebelled against him, they would win, so he will just be 15. At tier 6, at ranks 14, 13, and 12, are Joseph, Miguel, and Udo, aka the mercenaries hired by Claw. Although there were more than just these three, these are the only three named. These mercenaries were implied to have easily defeated the division leaders, specifically Udo. Toichiro also considered their loss after they betrayed him unfortunate. Many lesser ranks within Claw also believed they were at the level of the Ultimate 5 rather than comparing them to the division leaders or scars, meaning their standing was very high within the organization, higher than any scar or leader including Ishiguro. At tier 5, rank 11, we will have Hattori. Hattori is a member of the Ultimate 5 and considered invaluable by Toichiro compared to the mercenaries and everyone else, as well he was pretty confident he could stop Sho, so he should be confident in his combat ability as well. Not to mention that Minageshi at one point states that ability means everything within Claw, so I think it's actually pretty fair to say that Hattori is at this level even in combat ability. We've now reached the top 10 at tier 4, which will be Shibata at 10 and Minageshi at 9. Unlike Hattori, Shibata and Minageshi are actual combat types, and are entrusted with the battle against Japan and tear apart the Claw mercenaries. Shibata pretty handily destroys Dimple Mob while weakened and smashes through his full power barrier, something Dimple thought was impossible. Minageshi is above Shibata because he manages to do a little better against base Mob than Shibata does, as Shibata got obliterated right after Mob wakes up. Minageshi also defeats Fukuda, Utsuki, and Higashio. These three were entrusted by Sho to help rebel against Claw and were all scars from the Claw HQ. On top of that, the three had an ability advantage and used a three-way combination against Minageshi, yet Minageshi destroys them once he's serious. Also in tier 4 will be Sho. Sho was able to blitz and obliterate Hattori when he confronted him without even going all out. He also destroys Ishiguro with no difficulty. Sho himself thinks he's become relative to any of the Ultimate 5, though Toichiro still thinks he would lose to Shimazaki. My reason for putting Sho higher is simply him being able to handle other Ultimate 5, being Hattori, with no difficulty. Minageshi's best feats are really just slapping high-ranking scars and mercenaries we already know are weaker than Hattori. Sho also has another power, being his Charge Bomb, which if you grant him the few months of prep he had to charge it up, should exceed his own AP by a pretty significant margin. For these reasons, he's above Shibata and Minageshi at number 18, simply just due to higher assertion. At tier 3, we have number 7, being Taruki. Taruki is pretty confidently above Minageshi, but we'll have to get into manga spoilers for that. Later in the manga, Dimple fuses with the Divine Tree and uses it to suck away the energy from those around it. When Taruki confronts Dimple in the Divine Tree, it takes a while for the tree to absorb his energy. Meanwhile, Minageshi simply touching one of the Divine Tree's roots from far away had all his energy drained away almost instantly before he could even let go of the branch. Compare Taruki literally being inside the core of the tree is probably having his energy drained at a much faster rate than Minageshi, just barely touching one of his roots, yet lasts much longer. Teruki is also considered especially powerful compared to numerous scars, including Takeuchi, and does the best against Shimazaki out of everyone who was fighting him. He also has a wide arsenal of abilities, including a more advanced version of Teruda's air whips, pyrokinesis, and ethereal bodies, and much more. He's generally a very tactical fighter and was the one to discover Shimazaki's weakness. Perhaps you could say he may have surpassed Shimazaki after further training, however that would be impossible to prove, and he's really just far above tier 4. Unfortunately, this is where he stops. At tier 2, we have ranks 6 and 5, being Shimazaki and Serizawa. Shimazaki is pretty evidently established. Before he even goes full power, he defeats a squad composed of Teruki, numerous 7th Division scars including Takeuchi, Koyama, Tsuchiya, Mukai, Sho's resistance team who forced Minageshi to get serious, Ritsu and the Awakening Lab Children, and even more characters that I can't even remember right now. Even with his regular Esper powers, he's able to completely overpower them and stops Higashio's golem with just his hand. Once he gets truly serious, he blitzes and one-shots every character on screen with his Mind's Eye ability. This ability causes him to focus only on his fight and see all of his opponent's weak points. Toichiro also holds him in incredibly high regard, entrusting he and Serizawa to protect him and sends him to stop Sho from attacking him. Shimazaki himself believes he's the strongest after Toichiro, and is only really pressured when he senses mob approaching. Serizawa is generally considered Toichiro's personal bodyguard and hardly ever leaves his side. When Sho gets past Hattori and attacks Toichiro, Serizawa is able to jump in front of his charge bomb before it hits Toichiro and stops it with his umbrella. This charge bomb was composed of 3 months worth of Sho's energy built up and released at once. His umbrella also holds back a 3% energy wave from Toichiro. This is the first time it's openly displayed and shown he was using up to 3%, as well as shown through the increased amount of energy around his body. Prior to this, Toichiro tears apart Sho and base mob, likely using even less than 3% output. Serizawa also fends off base mob pretty well, and even when mob absorbed and redirected his blast back at Serizawa thinks he can stop it, which means his umbrella should be much more durable than his own attack potency. Toichiro also tells Joseph that Serizawa is the strongest of the Ultimate 5 right before he one-shots Joseph while holding back. Serizawa later, after losing his umbrella, was seen as so powerful by Reigen that there were few he could call upon that were stronger than he is, and he immediately calls Mob instead of Ritsu or Terugi. The problem with Shimazaki versus Serizawa is a statement by Shimazaki in which he states he is the strongest in the world after Toichiro. Many would see this and put Shimazaki above Serizawa, however there are a few problems. In the manga, it's actually stated by Toichiro that Serizawa is the strongest of the Ultimate 5. Toichiro, being the leader of the organization, and not really having a preference towards Shimazaki or Serizawa, is probably a lot more knowledgeable and unbiased compared to a possibly overconfident Shimazaki. Shimazaki also runs away the moment Mob gets a little serious. Meanwhile, Serizawa does decent against Mob and can briefly hold down 3% Toichiro, who was stomping base Mob moments ago. With that in mind, I would put Shimazaki at number 6 and Serizawa at number 5. Moving on to Tier 1, we have Mogami, Toichiro, and 100% Ritsu from the manga. Unlike the entire cast before them who blatantly struggle or lose to base 4 Mob, these characters have been shown compared to 100% Mob or even higher. Starting with Mogami, he and the spirits under his control are able to go back and forth with 100% Courage Mob. The important thing about Courage Mob is that it's the version of Mob that was fighting against 100% Toichiro. Even Mob's lesser forms could push Toichiro to using more power than what he needed to body Serizawa, let alone Courage Mob, which did far better than any of his other emotional states. By the end of the battle, Mogami even totally destroyed Mob's soul, forcing him to enter unknown percent state. Aside from that, there's not really too much to say. He was so strong Matsuo couldn't control him, and once he escaped his containment, he absolutely obliterated Minageshi using his own plans against him. He also defeated Dimple at his prime, even stronger than when he first appeared in the series. He's the first character to actually pressure Mob at 100%, with Base Mob even blatantly admitting that Mogami is stronger than he is. Remember now, Base Mob kind of beats up basically everyone below this tier. Even the prideful and hacked out Shimazaki pretty much just ran away as soon as Mob got serious, so Mogami being above that is very telling. I think Toichiro's placement is pretty obvious here, as much like Mogami, he's among the 2 characters to actually contend with 100% Mob. Even when he's heavily suppressed, Toichiro overpowers and battles numerous forms of Mob's emotional states. Even Mob's courage state, which was about even with Mogami, was overpowered by Toichiro's full power. What's even more impressive is that by this point Mob had learned the ability to absorb energy around him, and he was growing more powerful as he fought Toichiro. With a fraction of his power, he managed to empower an army of 600 normal people to nearly the level of the Scars, and wasn't even concerned when all of the Ultimate 5 were defeated or betrayed him. He destroyed Serizawa's umbrella with just 4% of his power, which took attacks from Sho and Mob. Even Shimazaki, who was incredibly powerful and prideful, admitted he was only number 2 to Toichiro. He has an extremely wide arsenal of abilities, like numerous elemental powers, ethereal bodies, gravity manipulation, and the power to absorb and give power to others. Despite that, he defeated every single Scar that challenged him using only brute strength without using any techniques. Ritsu is this high on the list for many narrative reasons. Sho highly values Ritsu's ability and thinks he has more potential than even Mob, despite seeing Mob in action against the Scars. However, we don't really see that potential tapped into in the anime. Ritsu around this time does have some decent showings, such as fighting against some foot soldiers, but nothing really that impressive. Near the end of the manga, Ritsu confronts his rampaging brother. Mob had gotten past numerous powerful espers, including Sakurai, Koyama, Teruki, Sho, and even Toichiro. Ritsu originally couldn't do anything, but eventually achieves a state similar to Mob's 100% state. With this, he was able to briefly hold back unknown percent Mob better than anyone else. Ritsu does admit he's still not as good as Mob, though it's not clear which state of Mob he's referring to. If he's just slightly weaker than 100% Mob, he'd still be far superior to Serizawa, who was struggling to even get close to Mob, as well as Shimazaki, who saw base Mob and got so scared that he had to run away. Weakened Toichiro also couldn't do anything to this Mob, with Serizawa still highly valuing Toichiro's power without his years of prep. Even after absorbing some of Mob's power to recover a considerable portion of his own strength, he still just runs away and can't do anything to Mob. But if Ritsu is referring to the truly full power, unknown percent Mob, which is very likely given that it's the form that he's actually fighting against here, it would definitely put him way higher than Toichiro or Mogami, which I'll explain in more depth when we get to Mob. Regarding how Tier 1 stacks up to each other, Toichiro is pretty blatantly above Mogami. Mogami was more or less a match for 100% Courage Mob, each was kind of overpowering each other at certain parts of the fight, whereas by the time Toichiro had reached 100% power, Mob had absorbed tons of energy from him, as well as being extremely motivated, yet Toichiro was still overpowering him and Mob needed to wait for his own power to destroy his body. The problem is Ritsu, who could be anywhere from just below 100% Mob to just below unknown Mob. If he's weaker than 100% Mob, which wouldn't really make any sense seeing as how his power fluctuates depending on his emotional state, he'd still be below Mogami, but if he's only below unknown Mob, he's more than likely far stronger than Toichiro. So the ranking of Tier 1 is a bit of a mix-up. I would personally give Mogami number 4, Toichiro number 3, and Ritsu number 2, but like I said before, Ritsu could be a little bit lower, it's a little bit debatable. Finally, in Tier 0, all by himself, is unknown percent Mob at rank number 1. While Mogami, and especially Toichiro, are around or even stronger than 100% Mob, unknown percent Mob is just blatantly more powerful. Toichiro, even after facing Mob at his strongest, plus being extremely amped from sapping away Toichiro's power, thought unknown percent Mob was his true power and thought he was holding back during the entire battle. He even admits there's nothing he can do to stop Mob and literally just runs away even when he has help. Ritsu, even at 100%, only manages to briefly hold back unknown percent Mob and runs out of stamina pretty quickly before Mob just continues rampaging. All of the spirits that Mogami was controlling that destroyed Courage Mob were then instantly negged by Unknown Mob as soon as he awakened. With the top 3 ranks below him all being just vastly inferior to Mob to this wide of an extent, there's really no contention with Mob being this high. We're talking about a character who in his base state can scare off and destroy some of the most powerful characters in the series. I don't think I really need to convince you that Mob is the strongest character.